I want you to imagine, just for a second, having absolutely everything you've ever been told you're supposed to want. Like, really picture this scenario.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So you have a seven-figure income, the kind of money that just replenishes itself in your bank account way faster than you could ever reasonably spend it.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Right. And you're draped in this, $3,000 perfectly tailored Italian suit that practically acts as armor.
Oh yeah, the classic power suit.
Exactly. Parked right outside your office, gleaming in the sun, is a shiny, cherry red Ferrari. By literally every metric society gives us, you are the absolute peak of modern success.
You've completely won the game.
You have won the game. And then, right in the middle of a packed, totally hushed courtroom, with millions of dollars on the line and everyone staring at you, your body and your soul just simply give out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you collapse onto the cold floor, gasping for air, shaking helplessly while the world you built just completely spins out of control.
That is terrifying.
It is, because you've spent your entire life sacrificing your actual living just to make a living, and your body finally decided to pull the emergency brake. Does that trade-off sound familiar to you?
I mean, it's the ultimate modern paradox, isn't it? We chase these external markers of success so relentlessly. The cars, the titles, the prestige.
Yeah, constantly chasing.
Right, and we completely bankrupt our internal world in the process. We just normalize chronic exhaustion.
We really do. We treat it like a badge of honor.
Exactly. We normalize living on a diet of pure adrenaline and anxiety. So it's a terrifying scenario to picture yourself on that courtroom floor, but it's exactly where we are starting today.
Because that collapse isn't just a physical failure, right? It's a systemic failure of how we define a good life.
Absolutely.
So welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a true modern classic. We're looking at The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma.
Such an incredible book.
It really is. And the mission of this deep dive is to basically extract the timeless wisdom from this fable and give you, the listener, a really practical, beginner-friendly framework.
Right, because we all need that balance.
We do. We're talking about finding balance, finding your actual purpose, and unlocking profound happiness in a world that feels incredibly, almost aggressively chaotic right now.
It definitely feels that way.
And I just want to set the tone right out of the gate here. This is not going to be an hour of us telling you to just, breathe and let go.
Yeah, exactly. What is so fascinating about this source material is how remarkably grounded it is.
Grounded is the perfect word for it.
Right. We are going to break down the highly specific, actionable, step-by-step techniques the author lays out for mastering your mind and respecting your time.
It's about really kindling that inner fire.
Yes. It's actionable philosophy. It's taking ancient wisdom and applying it directly to the reality of, mortgages and overflowing inboxes and demanding careers.
Which is what we all actually deal with. Okay, so let's unpack this by starting right at that inciting incident I mentioned, because it perfectly grounds these high-level philosophical concepts in a very real-world warning about burnout.
The courtroom scene.
Yeah, the courtroom scene. So we are introduced to Julian Mantle. He is this hotshot, intensely aggressive trial lawyer.
The guy's a total shark.
Total shark. He's the guy you call when you have $1 million on the line and you need a legal sharp to just rip the opposition apart. But the reality behind the curtain is incredibly grim.
It's super dark.
He is working 18-hour days. He's in his 50s, but the text explicitly notes he looks like he's in his late 70s.
Wow, aged 20 years from stress.
At least. His face is lined, he's significantly overweight, and he's basically surviving on heavy, rich restaurant meals, expensive cognac, and cigars.
He is completely hollowed out.
Completely.
He's running purely on fumes and ego. And it culminates in that massive heart attack right in the middle of courtroom number 7 during what the book calls the mother of all murder trials.
Talk about bad timing.
Right. It's his biology finally stepping in and saying, I refuse to let you do this to me anymore.
Yeah, the body keeps the score.
It does. And what's crucial here is that this near-death experience forces a radical pivot. Julian doesn't just take a 2-week vacation to a resort to, decompress.
He doesn't just download a meditation app.
Exactly. He doesn't even just cut back his hours. He abandons the entire game. He quits the firm, he liquidates his mansion, he sells the private island.
And yes, he sells the shiny red Ferrari.
He sells it all. He packs a single, simple rucksack and heads to India as a spiritual seeker.
Which is such a massive leap. I mean, it's the kind of fantasy I think a lot of burned out professionals have.
Oh, for sure. Just checking your phone in the ocean and walking away.
It's just walking away from it all. But Julian actually does it. And when he finally returns 3 years later, he visits his former legal colleague, a man named John.
And John doesn't even recognize him at first.
Not at all. Julian has gone from a stressed, aged, sick, hyper-anxious man to this vibrant, energetic, peaceful sage who literally glows with youth and vitality.
It's a total transformation.
A complete 180. He achieved this by traveling deep into the remote Himalayas, first meeting a man named Yogi Krishnan in Kashmir, and then journeying to a hidden, almost mythical village called Savannah.
To learn from the community's leader, Yogi Raman.
Right. But here is the analogy from the text that I really want to explore because it just hits so close to home. The author compares Julian's old life to running a multi-million-dollar race car engine full throttle every single minute of every single day.
Without ever taking a pit stop.
Exactly. Without ever taking a pit stop to let the engine cool down. Of course it's going to explode. But my question is, why do we do that?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why do we so often wait for a catastrophic wake-up call, like a heart attack, a divorce, a total nervous breakdown, before we finally give ourselves permission to change our habits?
Well, that raises a deeply important psychological question, and it speaks to the double-edged sword of human nature. We are incredibly adaptable creatures.
Adaptability is usually a good thing, though.
Usually adaptability is our superpower, but it becomes a fatal flaw when we adapt to chronic stress and severe dysfunction.
Oh, I see. We just get used to feeling awful.
Exactly. We slowly accept the frantic, breathless pace of modern life as normal. The tragedy is that we view taking that pit stop resting, reflecting, disconnecting as a luxury.
Or worse, in the corporate world, as a sign of weakness.
Yes. We convince ourselves we don't have the time to stop for gas because we're simply too busy driving.
Which makes no logical sense when you say it out loud.
None at all. But Julian's return to his colleague John beautifully illustrates what is functionally required to actually absorb a new, healthier way of living. And this brings us to a foundational concept you have to grasp before we can dive into the actual techniques.
The concept of the empty cup. I love this visual from the book. Let me set the scene. Because when Julian is sitting with John in his living room, trying to explain this mystical transformation, John is highly skeptical.
He's a cynical, exhausted lawyer.
Exactly. He's looking at his old mentor and looking for the catch. So Julian decides to demonstrate a point. He starts pouring John a cup of tea.
Okay, picture this.
He fills the cup all the way to the brim, but he deliberately doesn't stop pouring. The hot tea spills over the rim, floods the saucer, and goes all over John's expensive Persian robe.
Just making a huge mess.
A huge mess. John jumps back and yells at him to stop, saying, "What are you doing? The cup is already full. It can't take any more."
And Julian smiles and says, exactly.
You are like this cup.
Right. You are so full of your own ideas, your old beliefs, your ingrained skepticism, that nothing new can possibly enter.
It's a brilliant disruption of John's mental state.
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, particularly for you listening to this deep dive right now, you have to be willing to empty your cup.
You really do.
If you are listening to this through the filter of your current stress, your current definitions of success, or your current cynicism about self-help, these concepts are just going to spill right over the edges of your mind and make a mess.
You have to willingly set aside your preconceived notions about how the world works to truly absorb these lessons.
Absolutely.
Which makes perfect sense. My modern analogy for this is trying to install a brand new, highly advanced operating system onto a computer hard drive that is completely jammed full of old, corrupted files, malware, and cache data.
Oh, the installation will fail every single day.
Every single time. You physically have to format the drive, you have to clear the space.
Consider your cup officially emptied.
And your mental hard drive formatted. Let's get into the core teaching mechanism Julian brought back from the mountains. Because Yogi Raman didn't just give him a textbook.
No, that would be too simple.
Way too simple. He used a highly intentional, albeit totally bizarre, mnemonic fable to teach the 7 virtues of enlightened living.
Mnemonic being the operative word there. It is designed specifically to be neurologically unforgettable.
Unforgettable because it's so weird.
Exactly. The sages of Savannah understood something that modern cognitive psychology has proven. The human mind does not easily remember abstract lists of virtues or bullet points on a PowerPoint slide.
Our eyes just glaze over.
Right. But it perfectly, deeply retains vivid, unusual, emotionally evocative stories. Our brains evolved to remember spatial relationships and bizarre events as a survival mechanism.
So Every single surreal element in this story we are about to tell you is a psychological anchor for a vital life principle.
That's exactly it.
Here is where it gets incredibly interesting. I am going to lay out the exact imagery of this fable as the author presents it. I really want you to stop what you're doing for a second and just picture this vividly in your mind's eye.
Get the picture.
Imagine a lush, magnificent, deeply green garden. It is completely quiet and perfectly maintained.
Sounds peaceful.
It is. Right in the very center of this gorgeous garden stands a towering red and white lighthouse. Suddenly, the heavy door at the base of the lighthouse creaks open, and a 900-pound Japanese sumo wrestler steps out.
And wait for it.
And he is wearing absolutely nothing but a pink wire cable covering his private parts.
It is an arresting, slightly ridiculous image, to say the least.
It really is, but it sticks. So this giant 900-pound sumo wrestler wanders around this peaceful garden, and he accidentally slips on a shiny gold stopwatch that someone has carelessly left on the ground.
He goes down hard.
He falls hard, hits his head, and gets knocked out completely cold. He's lying there on the grass, unconscious, but then, slowly, he is revived by the beautiful, potent scent of some yellow roses blooming right next to his head.
Okay, yellow rose.
He wakes up, feels a sudden surge of boundless energy, looks to his left, and sees a winding path covered entirely in sparkling, brilliant diamonds.
Wow.
He gets up and walks down that path toward eternal joy and bliss.
So if you are listening right now and thinking, what on earth did I just hear? Did I tune into the wrong show? That is precisely the reaction the sages of Savannah want you to have.
It's supposed to jolt you.
Exactly. The subconscious mind holds on to absurd, slightly shocking imagery, far better than a dry, academic lecture on morality. We are going to decode every single one of those 7 symbols.
The garden, the lighthouse, the sumo wrestler, the pink wire cable, the stopwatch, the yellow roses, and the path of diamonds.
Because buried inside that weird story is a complete operating system for a fulfilling life.
Let's pull on that first thread. The foundation of everything is the first symbol, the garden.
The mind.
Right. The book states that the garden represents your mind. If you are a responsible, diligent gardener, you stand guard at the gate of your garden.
You don't just let anyone in.
Exactly. You would never willingly back up a dump truck and let toxic waste, which in this metaphor is chronic worry, unchecked anxiety, or endlessly dwelling on past mistakes, spill into your beautiful garden.
Because it poisons the soil and ruins the flowers.
But we do this to our minds all day long.
What's fascinating, and frankly alarming, is the sheer volume of cognitive waste we passively allow into our mental gardens without even realizing it.
The numbers are crazy.
The author shares a staggering statistic in the text. The average person thinks roughly 60,000 thoughts a day.
60,000. That is a nonstop, relentless internal monologue.
It never shuts off.
If you think of your mind like an internet browser, that is like having 60,000 tabs open at once, and half of them are playing audio you can't find and can't turn off.
That is the perfect analogy. It is a massive drain on your mental RAM.
Mm-hmm.
But the tragic part of that statistic isn't just the volume, it's the repetition.
Oh, right. We just think the same thing.
The text notes that 90% of those 60,000 thoughts are the exact same thoughts you had yesterday.
That is so depressing.
And for the vast majority of people, a huge percentage of those repetitive thoughts are negative. It's the brain's default mode network running amok.
It's worrying about a bill that's due, replaying an awkward conversation you had 3 years ago.
Or spinning out over a worst-case scenario in the future that hasn't even happened yet. It is a massive leakage of your vital mental energy.
So if your mind is a garden, you are essentially planting the exact same toxic, invasive weeds day after day.
Watering them with your attention.
Watering them, yes. And then acting surprised when you don't get a bed of beautiful roses.
So the obvious question is, how do we pull the weeds? How do we close those tabs?
The author doesn't just leave us with a metaphor. He breaks down some very specific, rigorous exercises.
The first one he introduces is called the Heart of the Rose.
It sounds simple, almost too simple.
It really does. It's a daily concentration practice where you literally take a fresh rose, you sit in silence, and you stare directly into its center.
You just stare at a rose.
You focus entirely on its color, its velvety texture, its intricate design. When your mind inevitably wanders, and it will wander to your grocery list, your emails, an argument you had, you gently but firmly force your attention back to the rose.
It sounds simple, but if you actually try to do it for 5 straight minutes, you will realize how completely out of control your attention span is.
Oh, it's maddening at first.
It is essentially a form of targeted object-focused meditation. You are doing repetitions for your brain.
You are building the neurological muscle of concentration. It is neuroplasticity in action. By repeatedly forcing your focus back to a single point, you are training the mind to silence the chaotic background noise on command.
It's like taking your attention span to the gym. But the second technique he outlines is where the philosophy gets very active and honestly a bit controversial.
Opposition thinking.
Yes, opposition thinking.
Yeah.
This is based on the psychological law that the conscious mind can only vividly hold one thought at a time.
Right, you can't be happy and terrified in the exact same millisecond.
You cannot simultaneously vividly imagine a joyful memory of your child laughing and also vividly hold on to a devastating fear of going bankrupt. They cannot occupy the same mental space simultaneously.
So, opposition thinking dictates that the exact moment a negative, toxic thought enters your garden, you must consciously, actively replace it with a positive, empowering one.
Now, I have to pause here and really push back because this is where my inner skeptic completely flares up.
I get that.
Is it really that simple? Just swap a bad thought for a good one, like changing a light bulb. What about when genuinely terrible, life-altering things happen?
That's the real test.
If you get a terrifying medical diagnosis, or you lose a loved one, or your company goes under, you can't just think about a puppy or a beautiful sunset and pretend everything is fine. That feels dangerously close to toxic positivity, where we just suppress our actual human emotions.
That is a brilliant pushback, and it is a critical distinction we have to make, otherwise this advice can become harmful.
Yeah.
The sages of Savannah are absolutely not advocating for emotional denial or delusion.
Okay, so it's not just pasting a smile on.
Not at all. When tragedy strikes, they aren't suggesting you stand in the ashes of your life and smile blankly. The underlying logic here is tied to a core philosophical concept. There are no mistakes, only lessons.
That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
It is. But opposition thinking isn't about ignoring the pain of reality. It is about reclaiming agency over how you frame that reality moving forward. It's cognitive reframing.
Oh, like the story of Malika Chand in the book.
Yes, to illustrate this perfectly, Julian shares her story.
Right, the school teacher from Calcutta.
Yes, she was a deeply beloved teacher whose entire existence was dedicated to her school and her students. One night, tragically, the school burned completely to the ground.
Just awful.
Decades of work, memories, resources, everything was reduced to ash. This is a devastating, objectively terrible event. It would be entirely rational for her to be consumed by grief.
And she likely was, initially.
Of course. But instead of letting that negative reality become a permanent toxic weed that choked out the rest of her life, she utilized opposition thinking on a massive scale.
She framed the disaster not as a permanent ending, but as an enforced opportunity.
Exactly. She realized the old school building was dilapidated and too small anyway. She used the tragedy as a catalyst.
She rallied everyone.
She rallied the parents, she rallied the local community, and they raised the funds to build a brand new, vastly superior school that could serve twice as many children. The event was incredibly painful, but her response to it was rooted in growth, not despair.
So it's about what you do in the minute after the disaster. You acknowledge the fire, but you immediately decide what you are going to plant in the ashes.
Beautifully said.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means your mind is a wonderful servant, but a tyrannical master.
It will run you into the ground if you let it.
If you do not actively control the narrative running in your head, that narrative will control your behavior, your stress levels, and ultimately your destiny.
Exactly. But if you successfully manage to pull those weeds and you've taken control of your attention, you're suddenly left with a lot of clear mental space.
Which can be scary.
It can be. And free-floating mental energy without a clear target often just devolves right back into anxiety. Your newly cleared mind needs a job. It needs direction.
Which leads us perfectly to the towering structure right in the middle of our bizarre garden. The second symbol in the fable, the lighthouse.
The lighthouse represents the concept of dharma, which is the ancient Sanskrit word for your life's purpose or your highest calling.
The purpose of life is a life of purpose.
The sages assert that beautiful, almost cyclical concept, yes. The lighthouse is the beacon that guides you through the fog of daily distractions. Without a clearly defined dharma, you are just a ship drifting aimlessly,
Constantly reacting to the waves.
getting blown around by other people's agendas, rather than actively navigating toward a destination you actually chose.
There is a fantastic story the author uses to explain the absolute necessity of defining this purpose. Yogi Raman takes Julian out to a beautiful clearing in the forest.
I love this scene.
He pins a vibrant rose to the center of a giant oak tree. He hands Julian a finely crafted bow and an arrow, and tells him his task is to hit the center of the rose. Julian is confident.
Naturally, he's a trial lawyer.
But right before Julian draws the bowstring, Yogi Raman pulls out a thick cloth and completely blindfolds him.
He takes away his vision.
Julian, of course, complains immediately. He says, "How am I supposed to hit the target? I can't even see it." And Yogi Raman calmly replies, "Exactly. You cannot hit a target you cannot see."
It is such a profoundly simple truth, yet it exposes how most of us operate. Think about how many people are walking around deeply frustrated, anxious, or depressed because they feel like they haven't achieved their dreams or reached their potential.
But they don't even know what those dreams are.
Exactly. If you ask them to clearly articulate exactly what those dreams are, they can't do it. They just have a vague desire to be successful or happy. If we look at the underlying neuroscience here, purpose isn't just some warm, fuzzy, esoteric feeling. It's a highly specific organizing principle for your neurological resources.
To make this highly practical, the sages don't just say, "Go find your purpose." They provide a concrete 5-step method for attaining your goals, essentially for building your own lighthouse.
Step 1 is forming a clear mental picture. They call it blueprinting.
You cannot be vague.
You have to see the end result vividly in your mind's eye. Step 2 is creating positive pressure.
This usually means public commitment, right?
Yes, you tell someone you deeply respect about your goal, so you have social skin in the game. You leverage the psychological friction of not wanting to let them down.
Step 3, attach a strict timeline. A goal without a specific deadline is just a wish floating in the ether.
And step 4 is where the biology comes in. You must perform the new behavior or focus on the goal consistently for 21 days.
Why 21 days?
Because that is generally the minimum time required for neuroplasticity to take effect. You are literally building a new neural pathway in your brain, wrapping it in myelin to make it faster and more automatic, solidifying a conscious effort into a subconscious habit.
And finally, step 5, enjoy the process.
Ensure that the pursuit of the specific goal aligns with your deeper internal values. Because if you climb the ladder to success only to realize it's leaning against the wrong wall, the achievement will feel completely hollow.
The text mentions a great tangible tool for step 1, the blueprinting phase, called the dream book.
It's a really fun exercise.
You literally get a physical notebook and you fill it with clippings, pictures of your goals, quotes from role models you admire, images of the physical health or the family life you want to build.
It makes it real.
Now, the way I see this working, my analogy for the dream book, is that writing down your goals and reviewing them visually acts like assigning a massive red flag to your subconscious mind.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Remember those 60,000 thoughts a day we talked about? Your brain is constantly filtering out billions of bits of sensory data.
It has to, or we'd go crazy.
But when you repeatedly tell your brain, look at this picture of a healthy body, look at this picture of a thriving business, this is what matters to me, your subconscious reticular activating system turns into a heat-seeking missile.
The RAS is incredibly powerful.
It suddenly starts scanning your daily environment, filtering all that noise to find opportunities, conversations, and resources that match that red flag. Opportunities that were always there, but you were just blind to them before.
That is exactly how the reticular activating system works. You are fundamentally tuning your mental frequency to pick up the signal you actually want. But here is the catch.
There's always a catch.
Having a brilliantly illuminated lighthouse and a perfectly clear destination is useless if you refuse to walk. And the actual path of self-mastery is rigorous. There is immense resistance.
Which brings us to the friction of action, symbolized by the most unexpected character in our garden, the sumo wrestler.
Right, the garden door opens, and out steps a 900-pound Japanese sumo wrestler.
Why on earth did the author choose a sumo wrestler to represent the next phase of this philosophy?
He represents the concept of Kaizen. Kaizen is a powerful Japanese philosophy that translates to constant, never-ending improvement.
It's usually a business term, right?
It was popularized in the manufacturing world, famously by Toyota, to constantly optimize processes. But the sages teach that Kaizen applies to human potential. The core tenet is that the key to any outer success, whether that's building wealth, cultivating deep relationships, or advancing in your career, absolutely must begin with inner self-mastery.
So the sumo wrestler isn't just a big guy.
He is a figure of immense daily discipline, grueling physical power, and highly focused training. He embodies this relentless, unyielding dedication to incremental personal growth.
The book illustrates this principle with the push-up anecdote, which I think is incredibly revealing about human psychology.
That's a tough scene to read.
Julian is trying to teach John, who is completely out of shape and exhausted, about pushing past his perceived limits. Julian literally drops John to the living room floor and tells him to do as many push-ups as he possibly can.
Just right there on the rug.
John struggles. His arms are visibly shaking, he's turning red, and he finally collapses on the floor after hitting 23 push-ups. He is panting and says, "That's it, Julian. That is my absolute physical limit. I physically cannot do one more."
And Julian doesn't care.
Not at all. Julian stands over him, totally unfazed, and demands do 10 more. John groans, argues, but then pushes himself back up, and somehow, through sheer force of will and adrenaline, he grinds out 10 more push-ups.
This raises a critical point about human capacity, something exercise physiologists call the central governor theory.
What's that?
The takeaway is that our limits are almost entirely self-imposed narratives, not biological facts. When John's brain screamed that he was at 100% capacity and his muscles were failing, he was actually only at roughly 40 to 60% of his true physical potential.
Seriously, just 40%?
Yes. The brain sends distress signals early to protect the body. The sages believe we possess vast, untapped reserves of physical, mental, and emotional energy that we almost never access, simply because we stay comfortably within the boundaries our minds set for us years ago. Kaizen is the daily, deliberate practice of stepping just outside that comfort zone to teach the brain that the boundary is an illusion.
And the author doesn't just leave it at the vague advice of trying harder. He provides specific daily protocols. He calls them the 10 rituals of radiant living.
These are so practical.
I want to highlight a few of the most impactful ones mentioned in the text, because this is where the rubber meets the road. First is the ritual of solitude. This involves mandating 15 to 50 minutes of absolute, unbroken silence daily. No TV, no podcasts, except this deep dive, obviously. No music, no family members asking you where the remote is, just pure silence.
True silence is incredibly rare in the modern world. We are constantly bathing our brains in cheap dopamine and external stimuli.
It's exhausting.
But solitude is biologically essential. It is the only time the brain can actually process the day's inputs, recover its executive function, and tune into its own intuition, rather than just reacting to the loudest noise in the room.
Then there's the ritual of abundant knowledge. This is dedicating at least 30 minutes a day to reading. But the author has a very specific, fascinating take on the purpose of reading.
He argues that even the greatest books don't actually teach you anything fundamentally new.
Right.
Instead, they simply reveal what is already dormant inside you. They give you the vocabulary and the frameworks to finally understand your own lived experiences.
That is a profound, empowering way to view literature. It shifts reading from a chore of data accumulation to an active process of self-discovery.
Another crucial practice he outlines is the ritual of personal reflection. This means taking 10 minutes at the end of the day to rigorously review your actions.
It's an after-action report for your life.
You look at where you succeeded, how you reacted to stress, and where you fell short. The goal is to ensure you don't blindly repeat the exact same behavioral mistakes tomorrow. It's daily, micro course correction.
And my absolute favorite is the ritual of simplicity, radically uncluttering your life. In Julian's extreme case, it meant selling the Ferrari and the mansion.
But for you, the listener, it might mean something much more practical.
It might mean unsubscribing from a dozen newsletters you never read, saying a firm no to joining a neighborhood committee you genuinely don't care about, or literally turning off your phone for the entire weekend to cut out the digital noise.
Just making space.
Now, I have to stop here again because I can hear the ultimate modern excuse, the heavy pushback everyone listening is probably feeling right now. Julian, this all sounds wonderful, but I am fundamentally exhausted.
The time poverty argument.
I have a highly demanding boss, I have a massive mortgage, I have 3 kids who need to be driven to soccer practice. I simply do not have an extra hour and a half a day to dedicate to solitude, reading, and staring at a rose.
It is the most common, understandable defense mechanism we have. Time poverty is a real feeling. But the counter-argument presented in the text is devastatingly logical.
The gas station analogy.
Julian looks at John, who was making those exact same excuses, and tells him that saying you don't have time to improve yourself is exactly like saying you don't have time to stop for gas because you are too busy driving.
It's ridiculous.
Think about the absurdity of that statement. Eventually, the car is going to violently sputter and stop on the side of the highway. You are that multi-million-dollar race car. If you are redlining your mental and physical engine from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. without ever taking a pit stop, the engine will inevitably seize.
It has to.
That 1 hour of Kaizen of reading, reflecting, and silence isn't a loss of productivity. It is the bare minimum maintenance required to keep the machine running at peak performance.
I love that. You aren't losing an hour, you are investing an hour to make the other 23 hours exponentially more effective. Okay, so we've got our mental garden weeded, we've got our lighthouse glowing in the distance, and we understand the sumo wrestler's mandate to constantly improve.
But implementing Kaizen, actually doing the rituals, requires a massive amount of grit.
You can't just wish for improvement, you have to enforce it upon yourself. Which brings us to the very strange attire of our sumo wrestler and our fourth virtue.
The pink wire cable.
Right, he steps out of the lighthouse wearing nothing but a pink wire cable. This specific symbol represents discipline and willpower. And the metaphor of the cable is actually really brilliant when you break it down.
It is, because it completely demystifies what willpower actually is. In our culture, we tend to view willpower as a magical genetic trait.
Like you either have it or you don't.
We think some people are just born with iron discipline, and the rest of us are doomed to eat the donut and hit the snooze button. But the imagery of the pink wire cable shows us the structural truth.
If you look closely at a thick, unbreakable wire cable holding up a suspension bridge, it is not one solid, magical piece of metal.
It is made up of dozens or hundreds of tiny, individually fragile threads woven tightly together. Willpower works the exact same way in the human brain. It is an emergent property forged through tiny, daily, seemingly insignificant victories.
It's progressive overload for your brain. It's making your bed when you are tired and don't want to. It's choosing to get up an hour earlier. It's choosing the apple over the processed snack.
Individually, each one of those tiny choices feels like a weak, insignificant thread.
But when you weave them together consistently, day after day, they form an unbreakable cable of discipline. The author even suggests actively doing things you intensely dislike just to artificially build this muscle.
Like the cold shower?
Yes, if you hate cold showers, take a cold shower. Not because the cold water has magical healing properties, but because the psychological act of conquering your own internal resistance strengthens the cable. Every time your brain says no and you do it anyway, you are thickening the wire.
Neuroscience backs this up beautifully. There is an area of the brain called the anterior midcingulate cortex. It physically grows when you force yourself to do things you do not want to do, and it shrinks when you constantly seek comfort.
So it's literal brain growth.
That is the biological equivalent of the pink wire cable. And alongside these physical actions, the text introduces the use of mantras to actively reprogram the mind's default resistance. Julian teaches John a specific phrase to repeat.
I am more than I appear to be. All the world's strength and power rests inside me.
Words are the verbal embodiment of cognitive power. By repeating a mantra of strength, especially when you feel weak, you are literally giving your brain a new overriding script to follow when the old script tries to convince you to give up.
So we have this massive sumo wrestler wearing his pink wire cable of discipline, wandering our beautiful garden. It's weird enough, but then the fable introduces a moment of conflict. He slips on something hidden in the grass.
The gold stopwatch.
He hits his head and is knocked completely unconscious. This is virtue number 5, and the stopwatch, unsurprisingly, represents time.
Time is the ultimate great leveler. It is the one single resource on this planet that is distributed with absolute, unforgiving equality.
Whether you are a tech billionaire, a spiritual sage, or completely bankrupt, you get exactly 24 hours in a day and not a second more.
The stopwatch knocking the sumo wrestler out cold is a stark warning. If you slip up on how you manage your time, it will derail all of your discipline and all of your personal growth. Time is our most precious, non-renewable commodity.
The sages address time management through what they call the ancient rule of 20, which is basically their ancient formulation of the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule.
This rule states that 80% of your meaningful needle-moving results will always come from just 20% of your actual activities.
This is a devastatingly accurate insight for modern professionals. If you audit a typical workday, most of us spend our days feeling furiously, exhaustingly busy.
But we are busy with the 80% of tasks that yield almost zero real impact on our lives or our goals.
Answering trivial emails, sitting in endless meetings that could have been a memo, endlessly scrolling through social media, or engaging in office politics.
The discipline of the stopwatch comes in identifying your highly specific, high-impact 20%, the deep, focused work the intentional relationship building with your family, the proactive health maintenance. Once you identify that 20%, you must ruthlessly, almost aggressively, protect the time required to execute it.
But let me play devil's advocate here. Doesn't micromanaging your schedule like that breed a different kind of anxiety?
How so?
If I sit down on Sunday and plan out every single hour of my week, putting in blocks for when I'm supposed to read to my kids, when I'm supposed to exercise, when I'm supposed to relax, doesn't that kill the joy of spontaneity? Doesn't it turn my organic life into a sterile assembly line?
It is a very common fear, and it's why people resist rigid time management. But the source material and practical experience refutes it beautifully. The sages argue that planning your week doesn't trap you in a cage. It actually builds the perimeter fence that secures your freedom.
Explain that.
Think about it. When you don't plan your time, your schedule is entirely at the mercy of everyone else's emergencies and priorities. You exist in a constant state of reactive anxiety, always putting out fires.
That's true.
But when you actively, consciously schedule the things that matter most to you, and crucially, this includes scheduling blocks for absolute downtime and spontaneity,
Yeah.
you gain immense peace of mind. You know your priorities are secured. It gives you the psychological permission to be fully 100% present when you are playing with your kids, rather than sitting there with half your brain stressing about the emails you should be answering.
That makes total sense. Structure creates the space for presence. And to give you the sheer courage to enforce those boundaries and protect that schedule, the text introduces a somewhat intense, sobering concept: the deathbed mentality.
It's powerful.
It means living each day with the acute, conscious awareness that your time on this planet is actively slipping through your fingers like grains of sand. Every day is a withdrawal from a bank account where you don't know the balance.
It's not meant to be morbid or depressing. It's meant to be radically clarifying.
When you deeply internalize that today is a non-renewable resource, it suddenly becomes remarkably easy to say no to the time thieves.
It becomes easy to politely decline the pointless meetings, to ignore the people who just want to drain your energy with gossip, to put down the phone.
You realize that you have to say a firm no to the little meaningless things, so you preserve the power and the space to say a massive yes to the big things.
Which brings us to a profound pivot in the philosophy and the culmination of all this immense effort. Think about the engine we have just built.
We've learned to pull the weeds and master our minds.
We've found our lighthouse and defined our purpose. We've committed to the Kaizen of continuous improvement. We've woven the pink wire cable of discipline, and we've mastered our time.
We have built an incredibly powerful, highly optimized human engine, but the critical question remains: what is the engine actually for? Where are we driving this race car?
If it's just for our own ego, it's a hollow victory. This leads us to the final two virtues, symbolized by the yellow roses and the path of diamonds.
So back to our fable. The sumo wrestler is lying there, knocked out cold after slipping on the gold stopwatch. But then he is revived by the intoxicating, beautiful scent of yellow roses blooming nearby. These roses represent virtue 6, selfless service.
This is the moment the philosophy transcends standard, ego-driven self-help and becomes something much deeper and more enduring. The author shares a beautiful, ancient Chinese proverb to explain this concept. A little bit of fragrance always clings to the hand that gives you roses.
That is such a vivid, tactile metaphor.
It implies a universal truth about human connection. When you dedicate your energy to elevating the lives of others, you cannot help but elevate your own life, your own joy, and your own meaning in the process.
The ultimate purpose of all this rigorous self-mastery, the solitude, the discipline, the goal-setting, is not to just sit alone on a mountaintop, hoarding your enlightenment and feeling superior.
Yes, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You must fill your own cup first. But once your cup is overflowing with energy, clarity, and wisdom, the objective of a fulfilling life is to pour it into the lives of others.
You master yourself not to escape the world, but so you have the profound capacity to serve it.
It's the ultimate redemption arc. The hotshot lawyer who lived purely to feed his own ego, who stepped on people to get a bigger Ferrari, finds his ultimate purpose and peace in dedicating his life to serving others.
But how does he actually experience life day to day while doing this? This brings us to the very end of the fable. After smelling the roses and waking up, our sumo wrestler looks down and sees a winding path covered entirely in brilliant, sparkling diamonds.
But the path of diamonds.
He walks down it toward eternal joy. The path of diamonds represents virtue 7, living in the present. And here, I really need you to unravel the ultimate paradox of this entire book for me.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this whole deep dive talking about the lighthouse, We talked about setting strict goals, blueprinting the future, being ruthlessly ambitious about our personal growth, and managing our time to secure future results.
Right.
How on earth do you aggressively pursue a future goal while simultaneously living contentedly in the contrary? Now, aren't those two psychological states in direct fundamental conflict?
It is the central tension of the human experience, and it's a conflict almost every high achiever wrestles with. The Thinges answer it profoundly. The resolution to the paradox lies in realizing that happiness is generated by the journey, not the destination.
Psychologists call it the arrival fallacy.
We have a terrible, culturally ingrained habit of continually postponing our joy. We say to ourselves, I will finally be happy when I get that promotion. I'll be happy when the mortgage is paid off. I'll be happy when the kids are in college. I'll be happy when I lose 20 pounds.
We treat the present moment, the actual reality of our lives, as merely an annoying obstacle we have to get through in order to reach some magical, friction-free future where we are finally allowed to feel good.
We're constantly living in the when-then trap. When I achieve X, then I will feel Y.
Exactly. But the Path of Diamonds teaches that the future is an absolute illusion. It hasn't happened yet. The past is nothing but a memory trace in your neurons.
The only place you can actually intersect with reality, the only place you can actually experience life, is in the absolute immediate present. Having a lighthouse gives your journey vital direction. It keeps you from wandering in circles.
But you must realize that the path you are currently walking, right now, with all its daily struggles, its mundane routines, its frustrations, and its small, quiet victories, is already thickly studded with diamonds.
You don't grit your teeth and suffer until you reach the lighthouse to be happy. You learn to find profound joy and engagement in the physical act of walking toward it.
Stop postponing your life for a tomorrow that isn't guaranteed. The act of striving, the friction of growing, the connection of serving others, that is the reward. You are already walking on diamonds. You just have to look down and notice them.
It's all right there.
Okay, let's wrap this all up and bring it home for the listener. We have traversed Yogi Raman's incredibly vivid, totally bizarre fable and extracted a comprehensive operating system.
Let's do a final review of the mnemonic map so it stays anchored in your mind. We started with the lush garden, representing your mind, which must be fiercely cultivated and protected from toxic worry, using techniques like the heart of the rose and opposition thinking.
In the center stands the towering lighthouse, reminding us to clearly define our dharma, our purpose, and set highly specific targets.
Out walks the 900-pound sumo wrestler, embodying Kaizen, the relentless commitment to constant, never-ending self-improvement through the 10 rituals.
He is wearing the pink wire cable, teaching us that iron discipline is not magic. It is woven from tiny, uncomfortable threads of daily victories.
He slips on the gold stopwatch, warning us to ruthlessly guard our time, focus on the 20% that matters, and maintain a deathbed mentality to say no to distractions.
He is revived by the scent of yellow roses, demonstrating that true fulfillment only comes from selfless service, leaving fragrance on the hand that gives.
And finally, he walks the path of diamonds, urging us to embrace the present moment and realize the daily journey itself is the ultimate treasure.
It is a remarkable, comprehensive framework for living. But as the author explicitly states, and as we must emphasize, knowledge without application is completely useless. It is just more mental clutter.
The universe favors the brave. You have to actually implement these rituals.
Even if it is just 10 minutes a day to start, 10 minutes of silence, or 10 minutes writing in your dream book, that tiny 1-degree shift in your daily trajectory can completely change the continent you end up on years from now.
And it requires the courage to prioritize yourself. You must fill your own cup, run your own maintenance, so that you can ultimately be of far greater value to the world and the people around you.
So we leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over today as you go back to your life. Think back to that multi-million-dollar race car we talked about at the very beginning.
The one running full throttle.
If you were truly going to treat yourself, your mind, and your body with the care and reverence of a priceless, high-performance machine, what is the very first specific pit stop you need to take today to let your engine cool down?
And what is the most toxic, repetitive weed you need to aggressively rip out of your mental garden right now before it chokes out your roses?
Take the pit stop, protect the garden.
We will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.